Why do you forget what you learn all the time? You spend a whole day practicing, right? And you think you got it down, and then the next day it's like you lost half of what you learned yesterday. That's what this video is about. And after watching it, you'll absolutely know what to do about this and use this amazing thing that happens in your brain to something very, very productive. My name is Claus, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and go download our free course just by clicking the link in the description. So, what is it? Well, we learned something, right? We learn a lick, which is the example I'm using in this video. It could be anything, could be songs, could be parts of a solo, could be whatever. Theory, for that matter, that you forget the day after you learned it. So you know, practice a lick. Whatever, right? And you play it over and over and over again, and you work on the phrasing and you work on everything. And then it's like you have it under your fingers and you can play it. And then the next day it's gone. At least to some degree, right? You lose your skills all the time. But this happens simply because you start doing other things. If you go into a pattern of movement and this hand moves and your left hand moves, and you do it over and over again, it's embedded into your short-term memory, meaning that the brain thinks, okay, we need to do this, obviously, because he keeps doing it or she keeps doing it over and over again, so let's get good at it, right? But then the next day, as soon as you stop playing it, the brain just clears that space in the short-term memory for something else, because you start opening doors by moving the hand. Maybe you cook food and use your fingers for something else. So it goes, well, we won't keep something that isn't absolutely necessary to keep. So it only stores those things in the long-term memory that you do all the time, like tying your shoelaces, cooking, opening doors, whatever it is that you do motorically. That's what gets stored in the unconscious, you could say, or the long-term motorical memory. So you don't have to think about opening the door, it just happens, right? You don't have to think about how to hold the fork or how to brush your teeth, because you do it all the time, every day. And the key here is that you can become, if possible, a master of a certain movement in one day. But that's not enough for the brain. It needs consistency over time. So the reason why you forget is because you haven't told your brain that I need this all the freaking time. I need to embed this as a permanent thing, right? I need to be able to pick up my guitar, and then I need to be able to play that thing like it was the easiest thing in the world. That's what we need to tell it. And the reason why it goes away is because you haven't told it. How do you tell it? You play it the second and the third and the fourth day. But I have a strategy for you where you can, instead of practicing every day for like a month until the brain finally gets it, you can speed up the process massively. So how do we do that? Well, what goes on when you practice a lick and you practice it over and over again, and then you forget parts of it for the next day, what happens then is actually you scrambled the memory in your short-term memory of that lick. You did other stuff with your hands. So, and then you learn it again, or you could say you relearn the same thing, right? And you play it again. So you kind of re-establish your skills, right? Speed up that process by simply playing something that is somewhat similar to what you're trying to learn. You can have a day, you can make from day to day to be an hour to an hour or a minute to a minute. But instead of just practicing the same thing and then forgetting it and relearning it, you can practice the same thing and then practice a thing that scrambles it. So you can return and having forgotten the first thing. So you can relearn it. Then you learn number two again. You relearn that because now you scrambled the second lick you played with the first one, right? So you have one lick here, then you practice that, then you learn another lick. Cool. Then you try to play the first lick again an hour later, and you've kind of forgotten it already, right? So you scramble the memory of. Now you can relearn it after an hour instead of practicing the freaking thing for an entire day and then having go 24 hours between the scrambling, right? So you practice one, then scramble it with number two, then scramble number two with number one again, right? And then playing number two. In that way, you constantly confuse your brain and take it in another direction so that you can multiple times a day achieve this effect of having forgotten what you just learned, which is what we want to do. Because the more times we can do that, the faster the brain will say, okay, then I'll embed it in the long-term memory. So you master it. And so, for instance, I would take, it's important that the thing you're trying to learn, and number one and number two, they actually look a little bit like each other. So if you're practicing chords, a chord progression, right, then practice two different chord progressions instead of practicing a chord progression and then practicing a lick, because that's single notes and that's chords. It also works, but if you can really be focused on scrambling, then you would take something like a lick like that, right? And then you would say, okay, that's my one thing, and then I have another. I play this 1,000 times. I play it with the metronome, I play it in front of the TV or YouTube, I just repeat it over and over again until it's, it's so easy in the short-term memory. Then I take it's the same scale, the same position. It's also the blues scale or the minor pentatonic. I play that sequence. And because it's so close to, right, you have to remember and you have to relearn the first again, right? And this really works. It speeds up the learning process so massively, it's incredible. And instead of working against and being frustrated about forgetting things, you're actually trying to do it consciously to speed up the process. It could be chords as well, right? You're trying to learn a song, right? And then you take that chord progression, that rhythm, that everything, and you play another chord progression. And you might even have to, because you get so into, if you repeat one enough, you get so into it that you completely forgot number two. So you have to replay it on your screen to list. Oh, that was what I was practicing, right? And then the fingers has to get into the grooves again. This works in the most miraculous way. Most people, including myself, got frustrated over how long time it took me to actually be able to play something without having to just a little bit get used to it again. But this, once I started doing this, it was like, 10 times the learning speed. So I hope this makes sense to you. If it didn't, try it out. And then I hope to see you in the next video.